So with that, I'd like to introduce Kate Wagner and Liz Lidget, who make up the team of Dory Walls. Not all of the team, there are other members of the team.
Yes.
So welcome.
So I want to start off with
Kate, what is your background and
My background.
got you to the point where you are now?
Sure. Well, I worked at Dwala for 6 years as the CEO's assistant. And so I just kind of fell in love with startups, specifically the beginning of startups. I just love how much problem solving it happens every single day. So I feel like I'm a startup junkie. And I think you actually were the one that told Liz to hire me 2 years ago.
yeah, well, like,
Yeah, and so thanks for that.
that's a good decision.
I'm not sure if you said it, but
Yeah, I've known Mike for a long time through Dwala and Ben. So yeah, that's my background, and I just really enjoy being on the team.
yeah, and having said all that, didn't you write a post one time about why it's okay to not like your job some days?
Yes, and I remember I sent it to my boss at the time.
Yeah.
The title was, I was like, it's why it's okay to not love your job.
Right, and it's really about,
It's so hard, and you're not going to love every day.
you need to repost that sometime. I can't
Yeah.
find it.
It's on Gravitate's blog, that's why.
Awesome gravity.
Yes, but yeah, it's, you are not going to love every day. It's actually going to be really hard. But I think as long as you believe in the company and you're trying to grow, then you can get through it. But you're not going to like it every day. You're just not.
And I think that's one of the fantasies of startups, because having worked in a startup, it became a 5,000-person corporation.
Right.
Not a startup, let me tell you. It's a
Totally.
great animal. You don't like every day of those either.
No.
I mean, it's not that corporate's bad and startups are good.
Good, or corporates are left and startups. They're both,
Have good and bad.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people fantasize working in
Yeah.
a startup, but it's not for everybody.
I do think it helps to remember why you started, though.
Yes.
And if you can go back to that over and over and over again about what that base problem is that you're trying to solve, or what was that reason that initially made you fall in love with the company or the reason.
right, and for some of us who were in the technology space early on, it was the technology itself that got us into it, and then later realized that customers are actually way cooler than the technology.
Right. Right.
So, what about you, Liz? What's your background?
So Kate and I are sisters. I don't know if you know that, but so Kate and I are sisters. We were born and raised here in Des Moines. Went away, went to the University of Missouri. Didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, but my parents told me that if you could write well, you could do anything. And so I went to the University of Missouri's journalism program. The other piece of advice they gave me was your minor should be your passion. You should just absolutely love to go to those classes, and they don't really have to do anything for you other than spark a little joy in your life. And that was art history for me. So, I'm coming up my junior, senior year, and they say, well, you actually have a second major here. And I realized that I had somehow fallen in love with art history. I'd always been an art junkie for sure. But then I decided to go on to get my master's in curatorial practice in the public sphere, which is a really wordy way to say that it's just public art. It's outside of a museum or gallery space. And lived in LA for a few years. And my husband and I kept coming back to Des Moines. He's from Des Moines as well. And we kept coming back and seeing how Des Moines was changing. And it was really the art scene, and it was just felt like these seeds were being planted that we wanted to help grow. It was so, so exciting. You had to be a millionaire to be able to make a real impact in Los Angeles, but in Des Moines you had to have a great idea. And that was just so intoxicating, and I really wanted to come back.
What year was that?
That was 2010. Yeah, it was right before we got married, 2010. So I came back, did a few creative things, and then became the in-house curator for a corporation here in Des Moines. And it was through that I really saw that there was a problem to be solved. And that was so many collections, corporate collections, in the 80s and 90s had in-house curators, and then because of the economy or whatever else just weren't being properly taken care of. Sometimes there was a CEO that had an art passion, but they would retire and the new one would basically acquire this collection, not imitate them. Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's when I decided that I was gonna leave my job and start taking care of corporate collections. Now, Adore Your Walls does many, many, many different things, but that was where it started.
Yeah. So before we get into what Adore Your Walls really does, I want to know, Kate, how does this work, the two of you siblings working together? And
Yeah, well, I think you asked for our background.
Yeah.
Both of our parents were entrepreneurs. And so we always grew up just assuming we'd be entrepreneurs. And I think we both have found that we don't like working for other people.
They're real authority
We
issues.
don't
Yeah.
work well.
You don't follow.
We don't. We, not a big fan of authority.
Yeah.
Anyway, but I think it's funny. People always want a scandal with sisters working with each other, but we have really enjoyed it. And I think what makes us work really well is that neither of us are trying to do each other's jobs.
Right.
And we both have our lanes. She is amazing at the creative side, the art curation, and I run all the operations. So neither of us want to do each other's jobs, so we work really well together.
I was actually talking on email to another entrepreneur in the area who was looking to find someone to join the business.
Yeah.
And I had the same advice, you gotta figure out what your role is,
Yeah.
what you're really, really good at. And then find somebody who is complementary, has their own interest in what you're doing that role that is willing to work with you.
Right.
Right.
And I think the other good thing is that because we are sisters, on the hard days, we can laugh together about
Yeah,
it.
we can be frank with each other too and get
Yes.
over it very easily.
Yeah.
Work
Decades
together.
of big sisters who does that.
Right.
But I think early on I was given the advice that do only what only you can do. And so I really had to take a look. It was hard for me to, even though I had been going after trying to get Kate to join the business for a couple of years before you eventually took the jump. You took the jump, was worn down. Yeah, I really had to take a look at myself and say, what are the things that I am really, really good at? What are the things that someone else could do? And I realized that people were not paying me for the logistics side of things. They weren't paying me for how I manage my QuickBooks. So my time can be spent a lot better, and Kate can be doing those things and really bolstering the company that way.
Yeah. Well, it's what it takes to grow, because it's very common for an entrepreneur that says, I'm one or two people and I can't grow. And it's like, well, if you break down where they're spending their time, the amount of time that they're actually spending generating revenue, it's a very small percentage of the time because they're so busy doing everything else.
Yeah.
And in some cases, it's like 25% of their time is revenue. Well, what if that was 85%? Reach your revenues double or triple, and it doesn't afford the next person. I know it's a hard jump to make, but it really is part of that growth process.
It is, and then as you continue to grow, I was finding that just as a one-woman shop, but then even being able to work with interns like Greg's daughter Claire, and a lot of different people have come and helped us through the years, but I was finding that I wasn't doing what I loved to do anymore. And so that, I was like doing 10% of what I really wanted to love. Now that we have a team, I get to do that more like 80% of the time. So it's a completely different world for me.
Yeah, and I think that's the other thing is you can actually be enjoying your startup a lot more when you get people around you
Right.
who do enjoy the, I know people really love doing operations, and I actually enjoy operations to a level as well. I never wanted to be the CEO. It's just I got to that level, and I told my boss one day, I said, don't ever promote me to this job. I don't want it. It's the last thing, because it wasn't who I was.
Right.
That took a while to figure that out.
Sure, I think it's important to know what you're good at, but more importantly, know what you're bad at.
Right.
Because then you can hire people to do that.
That's right.
Right.
That's right. So tell us about Adore Your Walls. Give us a little bit of the background.
Adore Your Walls is an art advisory service. We help people find the perfect piece of artwork for their style, space, and budget. We do that in a variety of different ways. We work locally with corporations, people in their homes, and then it ends up being national, but we have been able to tap into certain markets that are here in Des Moines, like the publishing brands that are here with Meredith just down the street. And so we kind of look at that as locally and nationally as well. Nationally, we have adoreyourwalls.com, so people can buy a art advisory package at a couple of different levels. They take a questionnaire, they send us photos and dimensions of their space, and then we help them find the perfect piece of artwork. A lot of people have a hard time classifying what type of business we have. Because we work locally, we have a small business in some ways. Because we have the website and we're working online a lot, we're kind of a tech business. Because we're sisters, we're a family-owned business.
You can check all the boxes.
Yeah, we can check all the boxes. Sometimes people have a hard time classifying us. We're not really too bogged down with those terms, but it ends up being a lot of different types of businesses.
Well, I think that, when people talk a lot about how much trouble some small businesses are in, especially in the rural areas or in the middle of the West, middle of the country, whatever. Personally, I think every small business needs to find a way to get online. I mean, it's such a, if you already have the storefront, you already have the office, you already have the quick space, why not jump online and see what you can do, especially if you have a unique product to offer. And so I see you guys, it's a hybrid business model, but it's the coming future.
Right.
To me, it's not, there's no room for 5 more Amazons out there. Right? Walmart and Amazon, the others are busting heads right now. What there's room for is 10,000 or 100,000 small businesses that have a global footprint.
Right.
And the tools, we'll get into the tools a little bit, but the tools that are out there make that pretty straightforward to do.
Absolutely.
You don't have to raise the amount of money Amazon raised.
No, and the great thing about the way that we've been able to grow over the last 5 years is that we haven't had to raise money. That's something that you and I have talked about a lot, and Mike had said, as long as you can be cash flow, do it. I mean, that's the great thing, is we don't really have to answer to anybody else, which is wonderful. But we have used a couple of different tools. When we decided to do adoryourwalls.com and launch that tech side of the business, e-commerce sites are expensive. So we decided to do a Kickstarter, and we were fully funded within a week through Kickstarter, and that's how we did adoryourwalls.com. People were able to donate at different levels, and depending on that, we worked with national artists to give them prints of artwork, depending on the level.
Right, that's really important because
Kickstarter,
it's a nice way to fund something, but it's actually a better way to validate a business idea. So
what they had is an idea for Adore Your Walls, and I worked with you a little bit more
Yeah.
trying to figure out, does this have traction? Is it
Right.
gonna work? And, at first it didn't work.
Right.
we had some kind of struggling times of saying, no one's reacting, no one's.
Right.
But, so to me, a lot of Kickstarter does for any size business is validate that people care. There was a game council 4 or 5 years ago that they had a Kickstarter for 800K, they raised 14 million.
Yeah.
Now, 3 years later, it didn't work, but what a way to validate that there was a desire for that product in the market.
Right, and the other way that we did that, that we really fully funded the rest of the company, was through a pitch contest with IWLC, with the Iowa Women's Leadership Conference, and it was called Invest in She. Does Invest in She still happen?
Not at the moment.
Not at the moment, okay.
You're
So,
gonna bring it back someday, right?
Yes.
yeah,
Yay.
that was an incredible opportunity. Drove to Cedar Rapids, gave my very first pitch. I had never been in that position before. They decided that I could be one of the finalists. I think there were maybe 10 of us or something around that size. And then I won $10,000 just from that pitch. And that was one evening, and it completely changed. I mean, it was all of a sudden we were ready and raring to go. And we got a lot of great mentorship from it too. So we've been able to use a couple of different ways to raise money when we didn't have that cash flow, that we're not in debt.
And that's really nice to not be in debt.
Oh, man.
It's a wonderful place.
Yeah.
So you mentioned your relationship with Better Homes and Gardens. I wanted to talk about that because
We get asked a lot about the accelerators that we created
here
here,
in Des Moines, the insurance accelerator,
the Agritech Accelerator. And a lot why they
happened was because we led
leverage strengths in the community. One of the things I think I find very interesting is you found a very strong point in the community that's now being stronger
Yeah.
way.
that you can leverage. So talk a little bit about how did you build those relationships? Let's go knock on the door of Merit.
No.
The front door doesn't get you into the CEO's office. So
No.
how'd you do it?
So, if we were in Des Moines and Meredith was solely in New York, we would be having very difficult issues trying to figure out how to get into those doors, because editors receive thousands of emails a week, right, from people like me. So one of the ways that we were able to do that was early on with the business, and that really how I started the business was going through my LinkedIn contacts. LinkedIn was 100% the way that I started my business. My very first client was DuPont Pioneer. I knew somebody through LinkedIn. I'd never met him in person, but he had asked to be my connection. And we had a coffee, and a week later I had Pioneer as a client, and a week after that I quit my job. So, I mean, that's just kind of how it was.
Took you a long time to figure out to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, my husband is here, but he hears me say, I have this idea. And I think he knows at that point that there's like really no stopping it at that point. I'm just kind of...
Face over here, it's like, no.
No, yeah. And so that, happened, and it happened very quickly. But I went back through my LinkedIn contacts, and I saw friends of friends, and I asked to be introduced. And that's really where it was. I think early on, but even now, 5 years in, I am not embarrassed to ask somebody for whatever, because all they have to say is no. And if that's the case, then...
Okay, you work with Ben on quite a bit, and I remember one of the things Ben used to say, oh, Ben walked in, so now I'm going to make him embarrassed.
Hi,
Ben had this habit of walking into the room early on and saying, I'm the dumbest guy in the room. And I saw he was being kind of silly.
He really believes that.
I woke up and realized how smart it was, because what he was saying, or this is my interpretation, Ben, is I think of myself as not knowing everything. I can learn a lot in the room.
Right.
And I think that really has a lot to be said. And the older I get, and I'm 57, the more I know I don't know, the more I just start asking people. And it's amazing what other people can teach you very, very quickly. That's why the Midwest is so great, is because they'll actually go, sure, I'll help. Unlike Seattle, where I was, where it was like,
Maybe it was
something worse.
But that's one of those things, that's one of my #1 pieces of advice for people that are starting out or have an idea. Christina and I end up spending a lot of people back and forth to each other, especially when they're early on in that stage, because I really like talking to people when they are just in that idea point, they're really ready to get started. I have a secret superpower to get people to quit their jobs. It happens in about 24 hours.
It's not like,
Like 5 people.
Yeah, so I really love helping people make that leap, because it was the greatest thing that's happened in my career, was doing that. But I'm so uninterested when people say, oh, I don't really want to tell people about it because I think somebody might steal my idea, or I don't really want to talk about it because I'm embarrassed, or...
yeah, how do you answer that one? Because I get it all the time.
Oh, well, I say that's ridiculous, because 95% of people are lazy. So no one's going to take your idea.
That's absolutely true.
It's true. No one's going to take your idea. And it's, I know this is kind of an offshoot, but when people come up and they're in an art museum or they see something that I'm recommending, they say, well, I could have done that. My answer is always, yeah, but you didn't.
Right.
And it goes back to that as well. Like, no one's going to take your idea. But I talked to as many people as possible. I would talk to anybody that would stop and stand still long enough to hear my idea. And from that, that's how I don't have to advertise for clients. Word of mouth was, I never really had that overhead of trying to, make the ads or commercials or anything like that, because I talk to people about it. And people say, well, have you talked to this person, or have you thought about this idea? Sometimes I had, but a lot of the times I hadn't. And just talking to people and taking people out for coffee was, the very best thing that I could have done.
Yeah, it's amazing, again, talk about the Midwest and specifically the wine, people will actually go have coffee with you.
Yeah.
And,
All you really have to do, and even some of them will not say things that are the most useful. Some will have ideas that aren't great.
Yeah.
but to be honest, just treating them with respect and taking a few notes about it and saying thank you, they may send somebody else to you later. They heard what you said, they said somebody else who's...
It happens all of the time.
Corporation.
It happens all of the time. And I try not to completely cold call. I try and go back through a LinkedIn or talk to enough people to figure out, can you at least introduce me? But throughout having this business, I have had the chance to meet with Fortune 500 CEOs because I sent an email. They didn't say no. They sent me an email that said, okay, you've got Tuesday at 6:30 a.m. And I said, okay, fine, I'll be there.
Done.
I look back at like Asuka Radia, who just retired, but you know, he takes Saturday mornings from 6 a.m. to noon to just meet with the people that email him. And that's why I do it too, because I think if, you know, a Dan Houston or Asuka Radia takes the time to meet with little old me, then what's my excuse?
Well, one thing too is we have that partnership with Martha Stewart.
Oh, yeah.
People ask us all the time how we got that, and we asked.
Just
We
this little
literally
partnership with
just
Martha
asked,
Stewart,
yeah. We said,
Yeah.
hey, we have this idea, are you open to it? And they said yes.
And then it's amazing, because there are, you know, you talk about editors being so busy and all that, but sometimes they're, I can tell you, a lot of people are looking for fresh content, they're looking for something new, they're looking for the next product, or the next way of going to market. I'm sorry, my mic is cutting out.
The other thing too, to piggyback off of that, is when we go after a Better Homes and Gardens or a Do-It-Yourself magazine or Martha Stewart, all of the apartment therapy that we have been able to partner with, these pitches are specifically tailored to them and their audience. We do not send out the same pitch to 12 different outfits. So I think that we really we take the time to study and learn as much about them as possible, who their readers are, and what are the other types of content they're doing. We try and find the gaps, but also why the audience that wants to read about this is also going to want to read about how to style with artwork.
Yeah, that's so important, because I was in that chair where a lot of people were bringing new technology to me because we had the market. And it got tiring to the same kind of pitch over and over. We got the greatest technology. And the ones that got past that, the ones that got in our door were the ones that said, we see an opportunity, and this is what the opportunity looks like. It's this little piece over here, and the problem you're solving is missing this piece, we think, and this is how we think we can add to it. And it's like, you actually spent the time to look at my website, not just the front page, but you actually dug in, you actually got to know some of my customers and actually thought it through. And that simple act, which takes some time,
Yeah.
but it's amazing. You can tell that, even on a cold email, you can tell the person that researched you and actually did some work.
We don't get emails back that say, well, we're already doing that, because we know exactly what they are doing. Yeah, we know they're not, so it works well that way.
So you are, the two of you, you have another full-time person here?
Tina.
Hi, Tina. And you have some contract employees.
We do.
Are those the art
Stylists, yeah, we have art stylists that help us with the art packages. One's in Austin, Texas, one's in Santa Barbara, because it's all online. They don't have to be here with us. And then we also have a contract person for business development.
Our dad's our general contractor.
Our dad is our general.
Our mom says she's on our board of directors.
Yeah,
even though we don't have one.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have several people that help us.
And that's important. I know a lot of people here in Des Moines that have own businesses that have virtual or contract people remote, and sometimes remote countries. Works fine.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's so easy, especially once you got to know them a little bit.
Yeah.
And in your case, the art world it's a pretty tight world, and you can
Right.
kind of look at somebody's past work. It's not that hard to do.
Absolutely.
So what's next for your Door Your Walls that you can talk about?
I'm sure there's things you don't want to talk about, but what's next that you can talk about?
So some of the things that we're working on are we're moving away from working with people one-on-one. That still happens all of the time. But what we really care about is helping people get artwork in their homes. And so we have realized that it doesn't have to be a one-on-one basis anymore, that we can do that through education too. And that's really what makes my heart sing, is when people look at a piece of artwork differently because they understand the background behind it. That's why I love still taking people through the sculpture park and telling them what the stories are behind the pieces of artwork. That has nothing to do with what I do on a day-to-day basis, but if they can walk away and see Spider by Louise Bourgeois in a different way than like some radioactive science lab experiment gone wrong.
Right. But that also builds credibility because they remember that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That time spent is something that's remembered.
Yes. So going back to that, we are working with more national brands because we want to help educate people. If at the end of the day they feel ready and secure to put that darn hole in their wall and actually put up an original piece of artwork, then we feel like our job has been successful. We are starting to talk to a variety of different companies about being in the retail space. helping them curate the artwork that they sell. I don't know if you've been to Bed Bath & Beyond looking for a piece of artwork lately, but it sucks. So,
I didn't ever think to go to it.
they do have it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so taking a look at how we can get limited edition but large edition pieces of artwork that we help curate into the retail space. And then also working with those national brands and trying to position ourselves as the art expert. So many art advisors throughout the country are working with people that have $1 million budgets. That's never going to be what we want to do. We're going to be wanting to work with people in this room. We're going to be wanting to work with people that are really just starting out and getting them to help buy their first piece of artwork or their second piece of artwork. That's exciting to us. So kind of taking a look at those different budgets.
So let's open it up for questions.
Please, if you have a question, just raise your hand. We'll go from there. While everybody's thinking about that,
Kate, I want to go back to you. You worked at a startup that grew very, very quickly.
Yes.
What lessons did you take away from that you see yourself applying today, every day, and go, wow, I remember how I learned that, or I remember where it came from?
I mean, I think about it all the time. I mean, my boss is in the room right now from that startup.
Yeah.
But, you know,
I wrote
yeah.
this down before you
I
came
know,
in.
it's okay. You know, I started when we were 4 employees and left when we were about 70. And that growth is, I mean, we were talking about this earlier, like when you hire so many employees, that changes the culture. I think, you know, spending a lot of time on the culture and the employees is something that I really learned. Something that we did early on in our company is that we wrote on our window in marker, we wanted to figure out, to make a list of what do we give a fuck about as a company. And if we can boil those things down, and we did, we boiled them down to 3 things.
Yep.
And now every decision that we make on a day-to-day, if somebody asks us for something, we go back to that board and say, does it go back to one of these 3 things that really matter to us?
Right.
If not, then the answer is no.
Yeah. That makes it easier to say no, doesn't it?
It does, and I love saying no. She loves saying yes, so we're,
You've been running operations.
Exactly, I love saying no, so.
Because it does matter.
It does matter.
There's actually a very famous Steve Jobs quote that, I don't remember the exact quote, but the implication was, the decisions I said no to were just as important as the decisions I said yes to.
Right. So I think that was a really important thing, is to figure out what you truly give a fuck about, and then, you know, focus on those things.
And going back to that too, when you first started, that was one of those times where it was a pivotal moment because I was, in the very beginning, so used to saying yes to everything. Well, would you do this? Well, yeah, I would do that.
Revenue,
Right?
yes.
Yeah, it's revenue. I'm going to keep the lights on for another month. Yeah, I would do that. But Kate helped figure out what we are, but what we are not, and that is just as important. It also helped me realize that we didn't have to do that because the things that I said yes to early on were now helping create that revenue instead of saying no to things. So when is that point where you don't have to say yes all the time? I do feel very lucky that, you know, as I said early on, that we started working with corporate art collections. We have this whole other world and really been able to diversify our revenue streams because I said yes early on. But now we say no a lot, which is good.
well, now you're at a point where you have to be careful of what your brand
Yes.
is perceived as.
Yes.
And so when you're starting out, absolutely do whatever it takes. We built custom computers for people early on just as a way to keep the lights on and keep our factory busy.
Right.
I mean, when you had 80 people in the factory, you had to keep them busy. But later on, we were in that same place, was that's not our brand. If we do that, it's going to make our brand look, you know, it's going to change what people perceive our brand as, so we couldn't do that.
Yeah.
And I think that's something any business has to think about, is once your brand, the brand kind of gets going on, it's a little bit on its own for whatever it is that works, right? Trying to find what people will pay for. But then you got to stay with it, you got to stay true to your brand.
You know, 5 years from now, I don't think we want to look back and say, how did we get here? This is not the company we started out
Right.
wanting to build. So you really have to take a look at that and figure out who you are.
Yeah, you have to watch that all the time, because your company can suddenly become something you didn't expect.
Right. And it's something to evolve.
Yeah,
As long as
absolutely.
it's still at the core of why we started this company.
And it's, yeah, as long as you're still having fun.
Right.
But we've also really worked very hard to define our brand through social media. And I think that we have a decently large following now because people know what to expect from us. And if we go outside of that brand, we hear from them. They're kind of like,
Oh, yeah.
hey, what is this about? Yeah. So, you know, Tina's been working on social media with us. We have a very specific style that we go after. The type of artist that we try and work with is very specific. And beyond that, one of the things that we really give a damn about is working with a variety of different types of artists too. So we make sure that we're working with at least 50% female artists. We make sure that we're working with artists from all different ethnicities. We're working with people from here in Des Moines. We're trying to lift up that art community, but also working regionally and nationally. We have those things that are really specific to us that we care about that then go back into that brand.
Questions from the audience?
Yeah. I'm not sure I can ask the question correctly, but
Go for it.
how did you approach and develop your internet and social marketing, social network marketing? How did you approach that? Who has the expertise in that between the two?
So which one of you is the social media
She's
expert?
got 25,000 followers.
Oh.
I'm very proud of
You
it.
guys want it all?
So I think you can answer this one.
How'd you build it?
To do the website, we hired out. We worked with Happy Medium, and I looked around at a lot of different companies, and we really wanted to find a company that could get the right style for us, and Happy Medium was that. So that's who did our website. Again, it's like going back to like, do only the things that only you can do. I can't do a website, I just can't. And Squarespace or something like that platform wasn't going to offer the e-commerce capabilities that we really needed. On the social media side of things, I basically created a guidebook that I knew that this was what we were always going to follow. It kind of goes back to, I always use the same sort of language and tone. People really want to see behind the scenes things and try and give them that exclusive access. So I try and not have it be so corporate, uptight, that they feel like not only they know me, they know Kate, they know how the company is working.
Like, it's not just a bunch of ads.
It's not just a bunch of
about
ads.
the journey of building the company as well.
You know, Kate and I had this day that was so terrible.
The worst of all days.
It was the worst of all days. And, like, for example, this guy came for a meeting that we were not fully prepared for.
I thought he was a bartender. I'm gonna be honest. He was not. He was the president of the company.
Yeah. So we thought,
I kept asking him to serve me a drink.
she asked him his name, and he said, my name's Steve, and he said,
And I didn't hear him, so I said, I'm sorry, what was your name? And he goes, oh, it's a Steve. And I was like, oh, a Steve. Like, I thought his name was a Steve.
It was like,
just terrible.
it was just a tour.
By the way, we did get that deal.
Yeah.
We did get that deal. We turned it around.
We turned it around real quick. But then right after that, we went to a meeting to sell a mural to a place that didn't have a wall for a mural. So it was just one of those days where we were not prepared. We took people along on social media and talked about it the entire time. And because we think that it's important for people to see that some days we are completely acing it. And then there are days that we are just fucking ups. Like it just is. Like it's just kind of the way that it is. So I think that authenticity has been really, really important to our social media strategy. Also being sure to understand where your audience is. So for us, Instagram is the perfect platform because it's incredibly visual, and that's what we do. And it offers so many different capabilities. We have the age range, and you know, like 60 to 75% of our followers are female. I mean, we know so much about the statistics of who's following us from Instagram, and we know that's where they are. We even know what times now to post because we know when they're interacting. From 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. is when we post, or at least I post, because I know that their engagement is really, really high. They're back on the couch, they've had dinner.
They're ignoring their children.
Yeah.
On their phone.
You got a glass of wine.
Right,
Yeah.
absolutely. Also, I think it's important too that, you know, you have a very clear voice on Instagram, and you try to as well on ours. Like, you don't post about what you're eating for breakfast because nobody cares.
No.
So, you know, you post about art things.
Yes.
And I think it's important to just stay in that.
But you also post things like the room for the baby.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
It's not just some
art, it's your art. I mean, there's a lot
Exactly.
of your walls.
yes, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that that continues to give it that personal feel that I'm practicing what I preach. I'm living,
You live what you do.
I live what I do. There's artwork everywhere. And doesn't it look beautiful? Don't you think your home should look like this too?
Yeah, I just want to come and hang out and work in
In
your
your office.
Yeah.
It's a very feminine office, I will say, but I love it.
It's like, I'd like to
Thank
hang
you.
out there.
Yeah.
You mean our pink couch is feminine?
Or our hot
And our hot pink copper table?
I think so. You know, you're wrong.
Yeah.
I still think it's fun. I like to work there.
Yeah.
It's a great place to hang out.
We changed it from, it was a very masculine office, and I would be very interested to see the previous owner.
Yeah, you should
come
get it
back in.
back.
You know, and see what it looks like
You should
now.
send him some photos.
You know, you'd be shocked.
Keep shut. Question? Yeah?
Yeah, this is just a statement that I have, but when you decided to, I do follow you.
Oh, yeah.
When you decided to get personal about the fact that you were having a baby and that
Yeah.
you were decorating the room, it was kind of like, well, I'm not sure
Yeah.
that people really want to hear this, and I kept my life private, but it was like your followers were getting this scoop on you.
Yeah.
And you were the one scooping yourself.
Right,
And knowing your followers is so important when you're
Yeah.
on social media.
right. You know, I think the interesting thing about that was I waited a very long time. And I was starting to walk around Des Moines or other places because the interesting thing about social media and having that many followers at this point is that I don't know the people that follow me. And so I have people come in and say, I'm so excited about Baby Rocky, you know, and like all of these things. And I'm like, I don't know you.
But you struggle to decide if you should post anything at all about.
I really did struggle to decide, but I decided to, and I really feel like people were able to then engage with me because they understand that my life is changing that way too. The other thing is that because I am my business, I am my brand.
You are your brand. I was
I
going
was
to
going
say
to say, that's the challenge of being a CEO of a company. You're the brand.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm watching Ben back there, he's had to be the brand, even on the days he didn't want to be the brand. I mean, it gets tired to be, I've always thought, again, it goes back to my own, I like being the one that nobody knew. You know, I got the benefits of being in the company, and nobody was looking for me to be on stage all the time, so it's great.
right.
I told Liz, I was like, I don't know if I should be up here doing this speech because I prefer to be the heckler of the crowd usually.
You were also covered for the fact you might not have made it here today.
That's right, I will cover, yeah.
You were-
I've got about 2 weeks left, so we didn't know if this was actually going to happen or not. But yeah, no. But going back to that, the other thing that it is because I talk so much about my business and what it's like to run a business. Having a baby as a female entrepreneur, small business owner, opens up all of these different other complications, right? So my business is my business, but it's going to be difficult, but I know it's in capable hands for the next 8 to 12 weeks. But letting go of that for the very first time in 5 years is incredibly difficult.
Yeah, we were laughing about this.
about the family work leave policy when you're the owner.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Midnight to 4 a.m., that's it. It's your leave, enjoy it.
Yeah.
Hope the baby doesn't wake up.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so many people have said, you know, like, what are you going to do? And I don't freaking know. I'm just going to try and take it day by day.
Roll with it.
Roll with it. You know, Kate is now CC'd on every single email because she has to know exactly where I've left every single project. We're getting to that point where it could be any day. Don't worry, honey, it's not going to happen right now.
Good luck, I like the look of it.
So anyway, so I mean, that opens up a whole other complication, exciting time, but
Well, it's something you have to deal with. If you are a female starting a business, running a business, and this is part of your life, is having children, you got to deal with it because it's not like a corporation where there's, hopefully it's a bunch of the people that can cover for you for a while. It's part of the deal. And it's, you know, you can say it's not fair, guys versus gals, it just is. And, you know, it's just something you have to decide how you can handle it. You think you'll be able to grow to the point where you've got people around.
right,
Because if you truly are just yourself,
It is probably impossible.
probably impossible.
Probably impossible. I hate to say impossible, period, but
I have many girlfriends that were in that position, and they say that that was one of their very biggest regrets because they never got to take the time to do that. And so I'm trying to keep that in mind and trying to step away, but at the same time, I don't know what's going to happen.
Well, the good news is you're living with age when you can stay connected without being physically located.
Right.
Because there was a time when that wasn't the case, and being at home meant being completely out of connection. So,
Right.
questions? Yeah.
So I'm interested in how your company started. Did you do research and have a plan in place, or did you have more concepts and aspirations of what you wanted to do? I mean, did you go the traditional route, or were you more iterative and just let it happen?
Well, I'm incredibly impulsive. So I started before I was ready. And now I think that was the very best way to do it. I don't think that I would probably even be ready today, right? Because the company continues to evolve. I did the research because I had been in the industry, and I knew that there was a problem. And I was seeing that through working and trying to find other colleagues that were like me at other places that had huge corporate collections, and there weren't those people. So when I had that meeting through LinkedIn and got to Pioneer, I had my retainer fee, so I knew that I was going to be making money every single month. I had a number in mind. I knew exactly what it took at that point in my life to pay for half of my rent, to have some groceries on the table in the cupboards, and to live very, very modestly. And the moment that I hit that number, I knew that I was ready to go. And then at that point, you can spend more time actually developing the idea, right? But I really felt like this is exactly what I want to do. This is my passion. I'm going to fight tooth and nail to make it happen. I'm going to work around the clock. I'm going to have what essentially felt like 3 full-time jobs to make it happen. I also tried to give myself a little bit of slack that, you know, if this doesn't work, then I just found one way that it wasn't going to happen, right? I didn't really think about failure in those terms. I really didn't care about that. I really still to this day don't care when people say no. We hear it all the time. We hear it daily. But the yeses make it so worth it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think today, with businesses evolving so fast and markets evolving so fast, there's a paradox of planning versus acting. Because if you keep planning, the market will change as you plan. And what your competitive analysis said a year ago is no longer valid. And at some point you have to jump in and find your niche. But
Right.
at the same time, you kind of want to be, at least you can fulfill the work. I mean, you need to do the work. You
Absolutely.
have to work a lot of hours.
Right.
You could.
And then early on, I took advantage of every single resource that was available. So I went into SBDC. I went and talked to people here at the partnership. Later on, I worked with Mike in Square One. I've talked to Christina about things. So I knew that there was this group of resources of people that wanted to see me succeed because I was a young female business owner here in Des Moines, right? Or just any business owner, doesn't matter. Yeah, I was just a business owner here in Des Moines. So people wanted to see me succeed, and that's the incredible thing about this community.
You had a question right here.
Yeah, I think your story is very impressive.
Thank you.
And I do have this question at the very beginning, how do you convince people you do have, knowledge about our work? This is the first. Second, when you talk to people, and how do you make people know, I need a piece of artwork. You also know where to find that.
So-
That means before that, you go to seminars, you go to art shows, and because by what you say, your undergraduate degree is journalism, right?
Yeah.
And journalism. Your master degree is public affairs.
Public art, yeah.
Public art.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Public art.
Yeah. So I think there was the educational aspect of things that people understood that I had a master's in it. But it goes back to talking to people about your idea over and over and over again. One of those things is that they give you ideas back, but also you help redefine how you talk about your company, and it continues to evolve, and you see how people respond to what you're saying. So, you know, when people would come back and say, well, I don't really understand that point, then I didn't use it again, right? But also making sure that people felt that I was an expert, and I think continue to do so because I do my research. I go in knowing exactly what they're looking for, and that gives them, I think, confidence in me.
Yeah, and I think that
With the social media network world we live in, anybody has the opportunity to stand up and say, look what I can do. You may not be getting paid for it yet, but you can show what you can do. And you can link to people that are known in that world. There is a very simple way to work through that process. And suddenly your social media posts can become
Your portfolio.
your portfolio and your resume. And keeping in mind that if you do it poorly, your resume won't look so good. But you really, there's a new opportunity out there that just wasn't there 15 years ago. You just couldn't do these things.
Sure.
Question? Come on. Quiet faces out there. All right.
let's see.
What else do I want to ask you today? What do you want to ask? What do you want to think about next? What's the big question out there besides work-life balance?
I don't, there is not a balance.
I think, yeah.
Listen, most guys can't say that.
But my wife and I talk about this a lot. It's just like we just call BS. Sorry,
Yeah,
there's no balance.
Something's always suffering, you just have to pick and choose what suffers that day.
I remember-
Is it family, is it work, is it?
My wife and I have never been close to divorce, but I think the maddest she's ever been at me. I was supposed to be at a soccer game on a Friday at 2 in the afternoon for my son in Seattle. And you have to understand that 18 hours before that, I was sitting in Heathrow Airport, looking at the board and said delayed all the way down, thinking I gotta make this phone call. And it's like, what am I doing? You know, why am I sitting in London again? I did like the 5th time in 90 days I was there, trying to figure out how to get to my son's game, because it meant something to him, and it meant a lot to him. Thankfully I made it, but I literally made it with like a minute left. There's no balance, I'm sorry, it doesn't work.
You know, we talked a little bit earlier about how we've been really able to take advantage of the industries that are already here. So publishing, we have clients in ag, we have clients in insurance. We've been able to tap into those things. There are big time companies here in Des Moines that we've been able to, I don't want to say take advantage of, but we take advantage of the fact that they're here.
The word's leverage.
Right. But I think we've always been able to use the fact that we started here in Des Moines and in the Midwest as an advantage. It is the reason there's a lot of reasons, but it is one of the very main top 3 reasons why we succeed is because we're here in Des Moines, in this community. Beyond that though, as we are building ourselves as a national brand, how do we convince people that are in New York and Los Angeles that we know what we're talking about as a creative business in the Midwest? It's not right and it's not fair or whatever, but who cares about fair? But the point is that they look at us and say, do you really understand what great art is? How would you know you're from Des Moines?
Right.
So it's important for us to continue to figure out how to tell our story and get in front of the right people as we expand outside of the Midwest.
Well, speaking of Des Moines story, first of all, how many people have heard of me?
Mainframe Studios. That's his show.
Yes. Good. Most of you have heard of it. I think most people haven't got a clue what we got here. If you could just speak to that, you probably know better than most what this means to the community and nationally.
Absolutely. So Mainframe is an artist studio that they have converted a large building that used to make mainframe computers, which is why it's called that. They have 70 artists that have moved in. They're redoing it floor by floor, so they'll end up having like 150 or something.
150 to 200 when they're done.
Yeah. But they have 70 artists that have moved in, that have studio space there. The amazing thing is that we're seeing artists move
From New York.
From New York,
And other
from
places.
Minneapolis, from Chicago. from Cedar Rapids to be here in Des Moines because we're offering the opportunity to have a studio space like this.
Well, you're right, it's a studio space, but it's a studio space with other artists in a community that supports them.
It's building a community of
And it
artists.
leverages on what Des Moines has already done.
Right.
Because the sculpture park and all of the pieces in our museum and our art walk, all our pieces that build up to the ability to do mainframe.
Right.
And I walk through there, my wife volunteers over there, I walk through there all the time, and I'm just blown away by the level of art that's sitting here in Des Moines. And I think part of that credibility is, hey, people from your city, New York, are moving here to do art.
Right.
That should speak to it.
One of the things that we talk about a lot is artist placemaking, how art can completely change a vibe in an area. And we saw that happen firsthand at the Sculpture Park. Every one of us saw that. But we're seeing that through the creative economy growing too. And I think that it's an incredibly exciting time to be in Des Moines because of that.
It is, it really is. So thank you both for coming. Can you stick around for a few minutes and chat?
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. Oh, do you have one more?
Yeah, there's one more question.
Yeah, okay.
Very interesting. Congratulations on your success.
Thank you.
That is wonderful. How do you take it to the next level? How many people are there like you out there?
Jake, what's, okay, somebody tell me what the next level is. I can never what the next level is, but go for it.
Right. You know, it's interesting because I don't want to say that we want to limit ourselves, but I have no intention at this point to raise money from other people. I have no intention to have 5,000 employees. I have an idea of what I want my business to be, and I think that we can accomplish that through 10 to 20 people, right? But it's about getting those big contracts. And since we're doing it through cash flow, it's just about getting to the point where you're uncomfortable and you can't handle it anymore, and then you hire more people. And that's basically how we've run the business so far.
And it's a good way to run a recession-resistant business, because the problem is there are business cycles out there and you don't know what's going to come next, and especially in the world of corporate art. If there's a corporate downturn in the economy, you're going to see a cutting of the art budget.
Right. You know, I think that people have an idea that, you know, we just saw Workiva become a $1 billion evaluated company. That's really freaking cool. That's very exciting. But that doesn't have to be our ultimate goal. So to be successful, right?
Yeah, and I got to be honest with you, as a community, I'd rather have 100 mid-sized businesses than one big one, because the problem with one big company is it can have a bad couple of years, and it can get sold, and it can move. You get several hundred businesses that are owned by people who make Des Moines their home. You have something that's durable, that will stick.
Right.
Thank you both for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you all
Thanks
very
for
much.
having us.